Hello and welcome to this instalment of Talkin Trim. I'm Jonathon Skinner and today we're looking at some fully trimmed sun visor units for the Jaguar MK2 models. Also applicable to the Jaguar 240 and 340 models, as well as the Daimler V8 250/2.5 V8 and the Jaguar S-Type and Jaguar 420 models. Now these are the aftermarket units. They are brand new moulded plastics with the rod element inside to allow for the rod arm to be inserted. We don't supply replacement ones of these. We're purely supplying these either untrimmed or fully trimmed up as per these. Just FYI, these are for a right-hand drive car, as it gets a mirror on the passenger side. We can supply right-hand drive and left-hand drive. And it's also worth noting as well, some of the original sun visors had a chrome edging going round. The aftermarket ones do not, nor can you fit your original chrome edgings to these. They don't fit over the lip, I believe. So just bear that in mind. But after that, these are effectively the replacement versions. Now it's worth noting that the very early Mark IIs had a very different sun visor unit, which was recessed into the roof area, as per this image in this book here. These are not those, and I do not believe you can get these in the aftermarket. So we're purely referring to these ones here, but without the chrome edging on them. Like I say, there is a difference between right-hand drive and left-hand drive, and we can supply untrimmed blanks ready to be retrimmed at your end if you want to do it that way, or we can supply them fully trimmed up in the headliner material. Now obviously our headliner kit actually supplies enough pre-cut material to retrim your original sun visors, but for an optional extra we can replace them and trim them up for you, which is what most people go for, so you get the professional finish on it. Like I say, we don't include these chrome rods, reuse your originals, and the reason for this video here is to kind of demonstrate not only the trimmed up versions here, but it's going to a bit of detailing of how to get that chrome rod inserted in, because we've had a incident recently where a, should we say, over exuberant professional trimmer got a bit carried away and has broken the sun visor units, which meant that we had a bit of an upset customer trying to work out what had gone wrong. Now we've agreed to sort this out free of charge for him, although absolutely it was the trimmer's fault, especially a professional trimmer. They should know what they're doing with these sorts of things, but I figured doesn't matter, sort out the issue in hand. So we sorted it out free of charge for our customer, but I figured great opportunity for me to give you a bit of a detailed video on the best process for this side of things. Now you can see from this one, this is the one that's the trimmer sent back to us. The inners have this tubing inside of it, which obviously the rod goes into there. Now, depending on the condition of your original rod, it's either going to fit in quite easily or it's not. Obviously these ones did not, and therefore some, should we say, common sense should have dictated what to do, but perhaps wasn't. At the very least, contact us before going to OTT with it. But essentially the thing to remember is these are made using modern day manufacturing techniques to very fine parameters, and so the consistency in these, I would say, is extremely high, whereas these metal rods were made in the 1960s, where production techniques were a lot less consistent. And also add to that, you've got 60 plus years of wear and tear, and crucially oxidization, which is obviously the process where things may expand slightly due to exposure to moist air effectively. So you've got to just consider that element of things here. You've also got to consider if they've been re-chromed as well. If they get re-chromed, then the thickness will also affect that. Now, like I say, you're either going to have a three-way of doing this effectively. The first way would be nice, quick and easy, which is probably unlikely, is that it's a nice fit and it allows it to go in there with a bit of pressure, which means that when you're actually bending it as well, it does have enough resistance in there that it doesn't just flop down, because that's crucial obviously when it's in the car. So that's option A, which would be fantastic, but probably fairly unlikely. Option B is it's almost the right size, but not quite big enough in terms of getting the rod into the tube there. Now, there's a few tactics on this. The first one to do is oil. Put a bit of lubricant oil on there and effectively try and see whether that helps the fitment. Like I say, you do want some resistance on there, but you don't want it to be too tight, but you also don't want to be hammering it in. This is clearly what this trimmer has done here, and it's just absolutely devoured the molded plastic. Rest assured, we've supplied hundreds of these over the years. We haven't changed our processes or anything like that, and we supply these with pretty much every Mark II kit that we do, and we supply a lot of Mark II kits. We also supply the untrimmed versions to various other trimmers around the world. And although I've had comments about how tricky it can be sometimes to get them to fit into rods, I've never had it where someone has actually gone and broken the whole thing like that. So he really must have walloped it, which is a bit silly, but hey ho. So anyway, getting back to it, oil or a lubricant, and that might ease the job. But the other good tactic, and this was actually a customer of ours over in Europe that suggested this a few years ago, was to put, you basically want to expand one, which is obviously this element here with this in it, and you want to contract the other. So he ended up putting this out in the sunshine on a nice warm sunny summer's day, and he ended up putting this in the freezer, and then he basically put them together after a few hours of that being nice and warm and that being nice and cold and frozen. He put them together and he said it worked beautifully. So that's going to again alleviate it if there's not much margin in terms of what you have to change to get them to fit going on. But the last resort, which is what we've had to do with these ones here, where there was clearly this was a bit too fat and a bit too thick to go through the tubing for whatever reason, oxidation or chroming, whatever. The tactic to do, get this piece and sand it down. I use a file and sand it right down. I'm going to create a guide at some point because I took a few photos of my chaps doing this specific one here. So they've filed it down, sanded it down, so that it literally fits through the rods nice, through the tube rather, really nice and easily. You don't want any kind of resistance on it. And then the thing to do is put it in a vise and just give it a very subtle bend right in the middle, really small. This one's actually already been done. You can just about make out. It's really subtle bend in there. Then it means that when you put it in there, there's a bit of resistance at some point, which is where the bend is. But once you're past that point, it's absolutely fine. It gives it a nice bit of resistance, but doesn't fall out either. So that's easily the best way of doing that there. And obviously, if you need a bit more resistance in there, just take it out and give it a slightly bigger bend on it as well. But really subtle bend on it. So, and it works absolutely beautifully, like a charm. So that's easily the best way of doing it, is to file down so that it easily fits in, and then just lightly bend it to the resistance that you want. And then after that, you should have a nice sun visor unit with everything looking how it should. Those sorts of things. So I just thought I'd do this interim video here just to give you a bit of guidance on it, because yeah, I figured it was a good opportunity. It was very frustrating when so-called professional trimmers don't really know what they're doing and then turn around and try and blame the manufacturer on these sorts of things, when really a bit of common sense, as with any restoring of any classic car elements, should be taken into account. So anyway, either way, problem solved for my customer, and a good opportunity for me to do a bit of a basic overview guide as to what to do, but also definitely what not to do. Anyway, hope you found that useful. Please remember to like, subscribe and share with other classic car enthusiasts, and be sure to tune in next time. Thanks very much.